The moment she realizes the invisible man was her best option. I am Mr. Eugene, and today we're talking about a moment that happens to nearly every woman who played the dating market strategically in her 20s and 30s. It's the moment she realizes that the man she dismissed as invisible, the one she overlooked as not exciting enough, is now the exact stability and peace she desperately craves. But here's the devastating part. Now he's the one who isn't interested. And before we get into this, let me tell you why I'm willing to examine this from the female perspective when my audience is primarily men, because you and I both need to understand what's happening on the other side. Not to sympathize, not to rescue, but to recognize the pattern so completely that you never fall for the manipulation that comes after this realization hits her. I've watched too many good men get suckered back into bad situations by women who suddenly see them differently after years of dismissal. So if you think this video is about feeling sorry for these women, you're wrong. This is about understanding their psychology so you can protect yourself from becoming their settlement option. Stay with me. Today we're examining the precise moment of realization, what triggers it, how women respond to it, and why you should never, ever accept being someone's backup plan, no matter how convincing her sudden interest appears. The invisible man. Let's establish who this man was. In her 20s, he was there, probably in her social circle, maybe at work, possibly in her extended network. He was interested. He made it known, either directly or through his behavior. He was kind, stable, employed, responsible, probably not wildly exciting, not dramatically romantic, not triggering the tingles that the bad boys generated, just solid, just there, just interested. And she looked right through him, not because he was unattractive necessarily, but because he was available, and availability in a man signals low value to women operating on biological programming. If he wants her, he must not be desired by other women. If he's pursuing her, he must not have better options. His very interest disqualified him. So she filed him mentally as nice guy, which is female code for unsexy safety net I might need later, but definitely not now. She kept him in orbit, friendly enough to keep the option open, distant enough to keep pursuing the men who triggered attraction, the men who didn't pursue her quite so obviously, the men who had other options, the men who made her work for their attention. And this invisible man, he watched this happen. He saw her chase men who treated her poorly. He listened to her complain about the chaos they created. He offered support, friendship, stability, hoping that eventually she'd recognize his value, that she'd realize what she was overlooking. She didn't, because she couldn't. Her biology wouldn't let her. Attraction doesn't work that way for women. Availability kills attraction. Obvious interest kills mystery. Being the safe option kills tingles. So he remained invisible, not because he was actually invisible, but because she was biologically programmed to not see him as a sexual option. Eventually, most of these men figure it out. They realize they're being used for emotional support while she gives her sexuality and commitment to men who don't deserve either. And they make a choice. They withdraw. They stop being available. They stop offering support. They redirect their energy toward women who actually appreciate them, or increasingly common, toward no women at all. And she barely notices, because she's still in her prime, still getting attention from the men who trigger attraction, still convinced she has endless time to figure this out, still believing that eventually she'll find a man who's both exciting and stable, both mysterious and reliable, both alpha and beta exactly when she needs each. The market shift and something changes. Not overnight, but gradually, predictably, inevitably. She turns 35, then 40, then 45, and the attention that used to be constant starts diminishing. The men who used to pursue her start pursuing younger women. The options that used to seem endless start narrowing dramatically. She looks around at the men showing interest and sees a landscape that terrifies her. The high-value men her age, the ones who are successful and stable, they're dating women 10 to 15 years younger. The men pursuing her are either desperate, damaged, or looking for someone to fund their lifestyle. Neither option appeals. And somewhere in this narrowing window, she remembers the invisible man, the one who was interested years ago, the one she dismissed as too boring, too available, too safe. And she wonders, what happened to him? So she looks him up. Social media makes this easy. And what she discovers shakes her entire worldview. He's thriving. He's successful, more successful than he was when she knew him. He's fit, clearly taking care of himself. He's got hobbies, friends, a life that looks full and content. And here's the part that breaks her. He's single, has been for years, by choice. Or maybe he's not single. Maybe he's with someone younger, someone who appreciated what she overlooked, someone who saw his value when she was busy chasing chaos. Either way, he's fine. Better than fine. He's genuinely happy. Without her, without needing her, without waiting for her to finally see him. And this triggers something in her psychology that's absolutely devastating, the realization that she made a catastrophic miscalculation. The realization, here's the moment, the specific psychological shift. She's looking at his life, at his peace, at his stability, at everything he's built. And she recognizes that this, exactly this, is what she wants now. Not the excitement she chased in her 20s, not the drama she tolerated in her 30s, but peace, stability, a man who has his life together, a man who would have been loyal, faithful, consistent, and she realizes that was him. He was offering exactly what she wants now, and she rejected it, repeatedly, cruelly in some cases, dismissively in all cases. She realizes that while she was chasing men who triggered her attraction but destroyed her peace, he was building the exact life she now recognizes as valuable. While she was tolerating chaos from men who didn't respect her, he was becoming the kind of man she should have chosen. And the most devastating part of this realization, he's no longer interested, not because he's bitter, not because he's punishing her, but because he's moved on. He spent years available, interested, offering stability. She rejected it, so he redirected, built a life that works without her, found peace that doesn't require her validation, became genuinely content in ways that don't include pining for women who didn't want him. She thought he'd wait. Somewhere in her subconscious, she filed him as backup plan, the safe option she could return to if the exciting options didn't work out. And she's discovering that backup plans don't wait forever, that dismissing someone repeatedly eventually results in them actually leaving, that you can't keep someone on ice indefinitely and expect them to be grateful when you finally show interest. This realization is brutal because it's accompanied by another one. She did this to herself. She had the option. She rejected it. Not because he wasn't good enough, but because her biological programming valued tingles over stability. And now that her biology has shifted, now that she wants what he was offering, he's no longer offering it. The response patterns. What happens next is predictable. Women in this situation respond in one of several ways, and understanding these responses is critical because if you're the man she's suddenly remembering, you need to recognize the manipulation for what it is. Response 1. The revisionist history, she convinces herself that she always saw his value, that circumstances just never aligned, that if only timing had been different, things would have worked out. This is pure fantasy designed to protect her ego from acknowledging she made terrible choices. She rewrites history to cast herself as victim of bad timing rather than architect of bad decisions. If she reaches out with this narrative, she'll say things like, "I always thought you were great, but the timing was never right," or "I always knew you'd be successful," or "I regret that we never gave it a real chance." All lies. The timing was perfect when he was interested. She just wasn't interested. She never thought he was great. She thought he was convenient. She never knew he'd be successful. She assumed he was average. And there was never a we to give a chance because she never saw him as an option. Response 2, the sudden interest, she reaches out directly, slides into DMs, sends a friend request, manufactures a reason to reconnect. And she presents herself as if the years of dismissal never happened. She's friendly, flirtatious even, testing to see if his interest still exists. This is the most dangerous response because it can feel validating. After years of being invisible, suddenly she sees you, suddenly you're worth pursuing. It triggers something in male psychology, the desire to be chosen, to be validated, to win the girl who rejected you. But understand what's actually happening. She's not suddenly attracted. Her circumstances changed, not her biology. You didn't become more attractive. Her options disappeared. You're not her first choice finally seeing your worth. You're her last resort realizing she's out of time. Response 3, the guilt trip. She frames her outreach as needing closure or wanting to apologize for how she treated you. She admits she made mistakes, that she should have seen your value, that she was young and foolish. All of this sounds like accountability. It's not. It's manipulation. She's not apologizing because she feels genuine remorse. She's apologizing because she wants something, access to your stability, your resources, your willingness to commit. The apology is the price she's willing to pay to reopen the door she closed. And if you accept the apology and allow reconnection, you'll discover quickly that the behavior she's apologizing for hasn't actually changed. She's just changed tactics. Response 4, the intermediary, she doesn't reach out directly. She uses mutual friends, family members, social media interactions to remind you she exists, to gauge your interest, to see if you're open to reconnection without the risk of direct rejection. This is cowardice masked as subtlety. She wants the option to test your interest without accountability for pursuing you. If mutual friends suddenly start mentioning her, asking if you've talked to her, suggesting you should reach out, understand that she orchestrated this. She's using them as plausible deniability. If you bite, she can claim you pursued her. If you don't, she never risked rejection. Why you should never accept this, and here's where I need you to hear me clearly, because this is where good men make catastrophic mistakes. No matter which response pattern she uses, no matter how sincere she seems, no matter how much it validates something in you, never accept being someone's backup plan. Here's why. First, you weren't her choice when she had choices. You were her settlement when she ran out of choices. That fundamental reality will poison everything. You'll always know you weren't desired, you were accepted. You weren't pursued, you were settled for. You weren't her dream, you were her reality when dreams didn't materialize. That knowledge destroys respect, hers for you and yours for yourself. She can't respect a man she settled for, and you can't respect yourself for accepting a woman who made you her last resort after rejecting you as her first option. Second, her attraction didn't change. Her circumstances changed. She's not suddenly seeing your value, she's suddenly seeing her lack of options. The moment her circumstances improve, the moment she has options again, you'll be back to invisible, because the biological programming that made you invisible initially didn't change. It's just being overridden by desperation temporarily. Third, you'll be entering a relationship with massive resentment on both sides. She'll resent that she had to settle. You'll resent that you were settled for. She'll resent that you're not the exciting man she really wants. You'll resent that she's not the woman who actually chose you. Both of you will be in a relationship you don't actually want, held together by fear of being alone. Fourth, she's demonstrating through her outreach that she still sees you as the safe, available option. If she saw you as high value, as genuinely desirable, she'd be terrified of rejection. She'd be uncertain of your interest, but she's not. She's confident you'll accept her because she still sees you as the man who wanted her when nobody else was available. That perception will define how she treats you in the relationship. What this means for you if you're the invisible man being suddenly remembered, understand what's happening. This isn't validation. This isn't her finally seeing your worth. This is her panicking about her narrowing options and remembering you're safe. You were good enough to be her emotional support, good enough to be her backup plan, good enough to orbit while she pursued men who treated her poorly. But you weren't good enough to be her first choice when she had choices. Now she's out of choices, and she's hoping you're desperate enough, or nostalgic enough, or validatable enough to accept being her settlement option. Don't be. You built a life without her. You found peace without her validation. You became the man you are despite her rejection, not because of her acceptance. Why would you dismantle that to accept someone who rejected you when you were building it? She had her chance. Multiple chances, usually. She rejected them all. Not because of timing or circumstances, but because she didn't value what you were offering. And nothing fundamental has changed except her options disappeared and your value became apparent through her desperation. Let her live with her choices, just like you lived with hers when she rejected you, just like you built a life that works when she wasn't interested. She can build a life that works now that you're not interested. The broader pattern. And let me zoom out here, because this isn't about one woman or one man. This is about a pattern happening at scale. Millions of women who spent their 20s and 30s chasing tingles over stability are hitting their 40s and realizing the stable men they dismissed are no longer available. Those men moved on. They're with younger women who actually wanted them. Or they're single by choice, having discovered that peace without women is superior to chaos with them. Either way, they're not waiting for women who rejected them to suddenly develop interest after running out of options. And millions of women are experiencing this realization simultaneously. The "where have all the good men gone" complaint is them discovering that the good men were there all along. They just weren't exciting enough, weren't triggering enough, weren't alpha enough to generate attraction when these women had options. Now they're exactly what these women want. But they're gone. Not because they disappeared, because they redirected toward women who wanted them or toward lives that don't require female validation. This is the consequence of hypergamy unchecked by realistic self-assessment. This is what happens when women spend their peak years pursuing the top 20% of men while ignoring the 80% who would have been loyal partners. This is the price of treating men as utilities to be selected based on tingles rather than humans to be valued based on character. And society tells these women they're victims. Victims of men who won't commit. Victims of a dating market that favors youth. Victims of unrealistic beauty standards. Everything except the truth, they're experiencing the natural consequences of their own choices. Final thoughts. Let me tell you what I've observed watching this pattern repeat across thousands of cases. The women who realize this early enough, who recognize their mistake in their early 30s, some of them can course correct. They can humble themselves, genuinely apologize, and sometimes rebuild with men they previously overlooked. It's rare, but possible. But the women who realize this in their 40s and beyond, they're too late. The men they dismissed have moved on too completely. They've built lives that work. They've found peace. They've discovered they don't need what these women are offering because what these women are offering isn't actually valuable enough to justify disrupting that peace. And that's the real tragedy here. Not that these women are alone, but that they had options for partnership with genuinely good men, and they rejected those options repeatedly for years based on biological programming that prioritizes tingles over stability. And by the time their biology shifted to value stability over tingles, the stable men were gone. I've lost patience with the narrative that these women deserve sympathy. They made choices. They rejected good men for bad boys. They prioritized excitement over security. They treated decent men as utilities while giving their best years to men who didn't deserve them. and now they're experiencing consequences. That's not tragedy. That's justice. That's the market correcting for years of inflated self-assessment and poor decision-making. And for the men who were invisible, who were rejected, who were overlooked, your vindication isn't in her finally seeing you. Your vindication is in her seeing you thriving without her, in her realizing what she lost, in her understanding that the backup plan doesn't wait forever. Don't give her the satisfaction of accepting her sudden interest. Don't validate her belief that you'll always be available no matter how poorly she treated you. Don't let her settlement become your victory. You won by building a life she's not part of, by becoming a man she can't access, by finding peace she can't disturb. That's the win. Keep it. This channel exists because I got tired of watching good men get manipulated by women who suddenly see them differently after years of rejection. I got tired of men thinking that her sudden interest means they finally won when actually it means she finally lost all better options. I got tired of settlement being packaged as victory. So if you're the invisible man being suddenly remembered, you don't owe her access, you don't owe her a chance, you don't owe her anything. She had chances. She rejected them. That's called consequences. And if this resonated, if you've experienced this exact pattern, drop a comment. Let other men know they're not alone in being suddenly visible to women who rejected them for years. That her sudden interest isn't flattering, it's insulting. Subscribe for more truth about female psychology that nobody else will explain this directly. Because this channel will never tell you to give women who rejected you another chance. We'll never suggest that her settling for you is actually her choosing you. We'll never frame her desperation as your validation. You were good enough then. You're better now. She wasn't good enough then. She's worse now. The math hasn't changed in your favor. It's changed in hers. Act accordingly.